Welcome to day 22 of your 30-day Dental MBA, Understanding Managerial Finance. I figure if there's anybody out there by now, I'm probably talking to Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is nobody's favorite subject, and this is the funnest subject in the world. Managerial finance. My gosh, why would you get him to go to work every day if you didn't want to someday live in financial freedom, have your money paid off? The problem is people don't understand money, and I know why. It's because if you don't, who's going to teach you money? Your school teacher? If your school teacher knew everything about money, why is she teaching $30,000 a year and putting up with 30 yelling, screaming brats and going home with a migraine every day? Finance is very difficult for a lot of people, but it's just because they've never been trained in it or they don't understand it. But let's try to have some fun with managerial finance. Warren Buffett took the helm of Berkshire Hathaway in 1964 when its book value per share was $19.46 a share, and its intrinsic value per share was even far lower. Today, its book value per share is around $20,000, and its intrinsic value even higher than that. The growth rate in book value per share during that period is 23.8% compounded annually. Warren Buffett is one of America's only 200 billionaires of the world, and basically, he's the second richest man in the world. And I went to school at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. And back in 1980, I remember I was in business class, and they were saying, "Oh, we got this guy coming over to speak, Warren Buffett. He's so smart, man. You gotta come listen to this guy." And I remember I listened to this guy spoke, and I remember walking back thinking, "Well, that guy's not very bright. My God, talk about the biggest missed call in the world." From 80 to the year 2000, this guy becomes the second richest man in the world. I think today he's worth $15 billion. He owns a third of Coca-Cola. He owns See's Chocolate. He owns Geico Insurance. Thank God I got turned on to this guy and bought years back into Berkshire Hathaway. It's the absolute best rating of the year. I mean, all you got to do is read his annual report, and there's more knowledge in there. It comes out a year. He hasn't written an autobiography, but he's written tons of essays. And your broker will give you his book, Essays of Warren Buffett, Lessons for Corporate America, 1997, selected, arranged, and introduced by Lawrence A. Cunningham. This man knows finance to a whole different level. Accumulation of small managerial stupidities will produce a major stupidity, not a major triumph. Las Vegas has been built upon the wealth transfers that occur when people engage in seemingly disadvantageous capital transactions. What happens if you double your money 20 times? As a passionata will be yours. If you take $1, double it 20 times, the 20th time, it's worth $1,048,576. You don't have to double your money that many times. I mean, you start with $1. I mean, you might have a $10,000 in a savings account, which means you're already at $10,000. You're already at day 13. All you got to do is double it from day 13 to day 20, and you're at $1 million. You don't have to double your money very many times to make a lot of wealth. What if you had a KEO or a pension plan that had $100,000 in it? Hell, all you got to do is double it once, 262, again, 524,000, and one more time you're at $1 million. When people say, "Oh, he's not that smart," you figure what would happen to your savings if your pension, if it grew at basically that rate for a very long time. Mark Twain's advice from Pudd'nhead Wilson was, "Put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket." Now, there's a lot of hidden value in that statement, and a lot of people invest otherwise, and we'll talk about that, the flip side of both sides of investing. A lot of people, including myself, will tell many people that if an index fund, you know, the Fortune 500 is average about 12.5%. If you start from 1926, so you could factor in the Great Depression, the stock market crash, 26 to 1996, stock market did about 12%, real estate did about 10%, risk-free rate bonds about 3%, whatever. People say, well, if you had an index fund of the S&P 500, you would match index funds, so you got 12%. If you pick a mutual fund, an index fund will beat 70% of them. Well, how does it do that? Well, it does it in two ways. Number one, the S&P 500, there's actually more mutual funds than there are stocks. Well, if you pick the S&P 500 and all the mutual funds, Mutual fund, the average mutual fund would have to do what the average index fund is, because mutual funds are made up of the index. It'd be the same. But when your broker comes in and takes a 1 to 3% commission, the S&P index fund has to beat 70% of all the mutual funds. But the major advantage of an index fund is this. When you have an index fund, you're buying and holding. So you're not making any, as long as you're not buying and selling, you're not paying taxes. So an index fund is really a way for your money to grow without paying capital gains on whatever you sell. So an index fund, I mean, if you're picking a mutual fund, I don't see any reason in the world for a mutual fund. I mean, I don't even understand a mutual fund. You have to pay taxes every year. The broker's getting 3%. I got an index fund. There's no trading at all. You just put in money, and they wait it out for the index. And there's no buying and selling. There's no brokerage fees like a 1 to 3%. It's very easy stuff. I have a lot of money in an S&P 500 index fund, or you can call it the Vanguard 500 fund, whatever you may want to do. But that's what we call diversification. I've decided to forego the 30% of the mutual funds that beat the S&P 500 so that I can guarantee jump over 70%. It's like, okay, I am settling for the 7th percentile mark with no capital gains, no buying, selling, no trading, no commissions. I'll settle for 70%, but what do I give up? The 30%. That's called diversification. Diversification is spreading your risk around. The way dentists who want to do if the average dentist is collecting about $23,000 a month, and you want to do $40,000 a month, which would have you double what the average dentist is doing, or say you want to do $50,000, $60,000 a month, the way you do that is by having 2 hygiene checks every hour. You can refer out everything you don't want to do, and whatever you like, you get good, fast, efficient. That's what you call diversification. If you only get 10 new patients a month, and you really have to do a little bit of everything, you simply would have to go get your FAGD or MAGD. So if a patient came in, wanted implants, you could do it. When it came in, wanted a root canal, you could do it. Fillings, crowns, orthodontics, whatever. The more tools you have in your toolbox, the more you can do. Well, everybody tells you in investment portfolio, you either go risk-free, like Greg Stanley's always saying, where he wants you to buy tax-free government bonds that can't default, yada, 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 or they want you to do a safe mutual fund or an S&P 500 fund, Vanguard 500 fund, what have you, and that's true. But if you look at the billionaires, there's only 200 billionaires in a country with 270 million people. You look at those billionaires, they all have one thing in common. They had almost all their money in one thing. They had a hit. Gosh darn, the richest man in the world, Bill Gates. Where's all of his money? Gosh darn, Microsoft. Andy Grove, where's all of his money in Intel? Don't you wish 20 years ago you'd put all your money in Intel or all your money in Microsoft? The last billionaire on the scene is actually from San Antonio, and his father's an orthodontist. Michael Dell Computers, and he's the same age as me. The only difference between Michael Dell is he's tall, dark, and handsome, and a billionaire. Other than that, everything else is the same, I guess. And so basically, I'll have one investment strategy. If you were going to put all your eggs in one basket, and you're going to be Puddinhead, who said, put all your eggs in one basket and keep all your eyes in that basket, I historically have only noticed one thing you have to do. You have to ride a billionaire founding father, okay? If you take a Fortune 500 company that was founded by its original founder, who's now a billionaire, and you think they're going to be in there 10, 20 years, the data's is about as sure, they're going to do very good. Why? It's all management. That billionaire works 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you'd have put your money in Ray Kroc or Thomas Watson Jr. of IBM or Sam Walton of Walmart or Andy Grove of Intel or Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway or Bill Gates of Microsoft. And Bill Gates is an interesting guy to follow. I mean, hell, he's not that old. He's only early 40s. He's going to be a major player for another 20, 30 years. But if you're going to put all your money in one stock, don't put in there because you think they got a really good product, or they really got a great concept, or they got a great idea, or they got a great patent, because all those things added up together will get you a bankruptcy. It's execution, execution, execution. If the 3 rules of real estate are location, 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 the 3 rules of business are execution, execution, execution. My dad told me a million times, there's nothing in a McDonald's. You can walk in the front door and walk out the back. There's nothing in there that every American hasn't figured out, from the play area, the drive-through, the hamburger, the fry, the Coke. It's simply execution. Can you pull it off? A major additional investment in a terrible industry usually is about as rewarding as struggling in quicksand. The first thing you got to realize is that the best company in buggy whips is going out of business. You have to, if you want to have a growing company, you have to be in a growing industry. A lot of dentists ask me when these companies start going public in dentistry, and you had, Orthodontic Centers of America, and Coast, and Monarch, and General Dental, and Interdent, and Pentagora, and all these different companies coming out, and then Patterson went public, then Shine went public, and all these publicly traded dental companies. And I was covering them in the Farran report because I thought you would really learn a lot if you would get, buy a couple shares of each one of these companies, so you get on their mailing list, so every quarter you get their 10Q, every year end you get their 10K. It'd be some very sophisticated readings about your dental industry, macroeconomics. You'd learn how to read a statement of income, balance sheet, and a cash statement of cash flow. But the problem, they said to me, you should start a dental mutual fund, a mutual fund that only invests in dentistry. I said, well, dentistry is a very plateau industry. If you were going to pick a mutual fund, you'd want it in an industry with a massive tailwind, something in the internet, something in technology, not a mature industry. You want a major additional investment in a fastly growing, booming industry that's going around the world. A lot of people think some of these companies like Kodak have already played themselves out. You know what Kodak says? Kodak realizes half the people living around the world have not taken their first picture. Warren Buffett has a third of his money in Coca-Cola because he keeps saying half the people in the world have never tasted their first sip of Coca-Cola. So you want good industries. I just don't know how I would pick a single company. I let Warren Buffett do that. I just keep buying every time I can, buy another Berkshire Hathaway, or load up on companies where I think the billionaire is still going to be there for a long time. Sam Walton died at Walmart. What do you think the chances the next manager who took over is going to be as sharp as Sam Walton? I figure about the same chance as I'll be hit by a comet before this tape is over. Look at IBM. The founding father dies. They go on a tailspin for 10 years. Andy Grove just went from CEO to chairman of the board at Intel. My gosh, he's chairman of the board. He'll probably hang on to it. But the minute he did that, I said, you watch. If you could stand back from the day it was started to now, it's crested out the minute he did that. Bill Gates, Microsoft, 37% of the households in America, the rich country world, have a computer. That means 2 out of every 3 houses don't. What percent of the houses around the globe have yet to have their first Windows 95 installed? I figure somewhere around, 92, 93%. This guy's 40, 45 years old, and people are saying that, Bill Gates has seen his heyday. I wouldn't compete against Bill. I'd shoot myself were I to compete against Bill Gates. If you want to know how vicious of a competitor he is, he dropped out of Harvard because he couldn't even wait to get his degree in Harvard, and he rolled over the government in that lawsuit deal. The guy is a formidable, vicious, straight to the point, brilliant, genius strategist. I can't say enough about Bill Gates, but I think his wave's got a lot to come. Warren Buffett. He's the only guy that doesn't bother me if he drops dead, because he doesn't manage in his company. He just picks them. He picks winner. This guy should have been a baseball scout, okay? He owns 100% of See's Chocolate. He owns 100% of Geico. He owns a big chunk of Disney. He owns a big chunk of Coca-Cola. And if half the people in the world have never had their first drink of Coca-Cola, I don't think if Warren Buffett dies, anything's going to happen to how many people drink Coca-Cola, eat See's Chocolate, or have car insurance through Geico, or want to eat See's Chocolate. See, Warren Buffett's not in the day-to-day operations. In fact, he just has a handful of employees. Berkshire's dividend policy also reflects Buffett's conviction that a company's earning power payout versus retention decision should be based on a single test. Each dollar of earnings should be retained if retention will increase market value by at least a like amount. Otherwise, it should be paid out. What does he mean? Companies will have $20 million of profit, but they don't pay it out. They'll say, well, we're only going to pay $10 million out because we're going to invest $10 million in our own company. Warren says that's okay if you invest, have $10 million retained earnings, January 1, invest in your company, as long as we get it back out by the end of the year, plus a return. But if you're going to invest $10 million in your company and it's not going to increase profits, well, hell, that's not an investment. That's just flush the money down the toilet, give it to me instead. So he always picks companies that have a very solid policy about profits. If you're going to retain the dollar of earnings, it better increase in value at least by a like amount, otherwise paid out as a profit. Read essays of Warren Buffett. It's outstanding. I've read 3. That's the only time I broke my rule. I only read autobiographies. I don't read biographies, but since Warren doesn't have one, I've had to read 3 different autobiographies on him. And between the 3, I think got a pretty good feel how this guy thinks to somewhat. Select business with economic characteristics allowing each dollar retained earnings to be translated eventually into at least $1 of market value. Dentists make an investment of about $75,000 or more 3 to 5 times during their average dental career. Ask yourself when you're making a $75,000 investment, are you ever going to be able to get this out? It really bothers me when you rent your dental office, but you dump $75,000 into a remodel once or twice or 3 times in your lifetime, whereas if it would have been your own land and building, you could have gotten that value out. I mean, you could leave, you own the building, now you could rent it out to someone else. Make sure that if you're going to invest money, hopefully, since you're a dentist, you're going to make all your money doing dentistry. Hopefully, it's to buy microabrasion. You want to invest $75,000 a day, I'd buy a Cerac 2 machine from Patterson. $75,000 would put a $12,000 intraoral camera and 6 operatories. Invest in something that's going to make you do better, faster, higher quality dentistry that'll make your dentistry either a better product or a better service, or something that gets your speed and efficiency down so you can get closer to best price. The average dentist spends $30,000 per year on equipment and practice enhancements. This is from another different source of statistics. The thing with statistics is you never know what's right. Usually these are from credit agencies. This is from a big bank in Canada that showed me this one. Over time, the skill with which a company's managers allocate capital has an enormous impact on the enterprise's value. A really good business generates far more cash than it can use internally. What I found with dentists, if they ever get $30,000 of seed corn, first thing they invested in is a swimming pool, Mercedes-Benz, a big screen TV. They always take their investment capital and consume it, okay? When I got married, I told my wife, if you could live off $2,500 a month for 5 years, and let me invest all the money back into the dental office. If you let me invest everything back in the dental office for 5 years, you'll live like no woman has for 35 years. And she agreed, and it worked fantastic for the first 2 months. And when a management with a reputation for brilliance tackles a business with a reputation for poor fundamental economics, it is the reputation of the business that remains intact. Should you find yourself in a chronically leaking boat, energy devoted to changing vessels is likely to be more productive than energy devoted to patching leaks. He bought Berkshire Hathaway as a textile mill. Every year that went by, overseas people were doing textiles for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And Warren Buffett bought this Berkshire Hathaway because it had nice cash flow. But what management was doing with all the profit dollars was dumping in new textile machines, and it was a sinking boat. So Warren Buffett saw the enormous value in buying this sinking boat because the management could just not deal with the fact that their boat was sinking. They were taking all the profits and reinvesting it in the sinking ship. So he bought Berkshire Hathaway, I believe it was about 20 steel mills. And when it needed, machines would break down, he closed down one, used it for parts for the other 19, taking all the profit out, investing it in companies that were rising stars. And then when more machines broke down, he'd have to cannibalize another steel mill. And over a course of about 10 or 15 years, all the steel mills, all the textile mills of Berkshire Hathaway were closed down. And he had all the money into Geico and Coca-Cola and Disney and all these booming stars. So investment success will not be produced by arcane formula, computer programs, or signals flashed by the price behavior of stocks and markets. An investor will succeed by coupling good business judgment with the ability to insulate his thoughts and behavior from the super contagious emotions that swirl around the marketplace. You walk down Wall Street, everybody's got a stock tip. Warren Buffett's the only billionaire who made it in the stock market, and he doesn't have a ticker tape. He doesn't even have a personal computer. All he does, he sits in his house. In Omaha, we drove by it several times. He just sits in his house, and he drinks cherry Coke all day long while he reads about 3 10Ks a day. It's all he's done for, gosh darn, 30, 40 years is just sit around and read 10Ks, and he just looks for cash flow. Warren Buffett always says, I do not have, never have had, and never will have an opinion about where the stock market, interest rates, or business activity will be a year from now. The most stupidest person in the world, according to Warren Buffett, or if you listen to him, are traders. They don't understand. He said, if McDonald's stock, if the market crashed, say it went from 10,000 to 5,000, what would happen the next morning? Would only half the people get up and go to McDonald's? If the stock market crashed from 10,000 to 5,000, would half America say, well, God, the market went from 10,000 to 5,000, thus only half of us can get up and have a cup of coffee. The stock market is a casino in the short run. In the long run, it's about management, business fundamentals, or do you have good management that knows how to take a dollar profit and either pay it out? If you don't have a good source of that dollar in your business, pay it out. That way you can put that dollar where you can get the maximum return for it. If something can't go on forever, it will end. Graham said, now Graham Newman, who wrote The Intelligent Investor, was Warren Buffett's idol. And Warren Buffett went to business school at Columbia. And Graham said that if forced to distill the secret of sound investment to 3 words, they would be margin of safety. Everybody in the world will tell you, you buy low, you sell high. And what does everybody do? They sit there and buy high and sell low, and they don't even know it. They'll say, oh my gosh, look at Merck. It doubled. It just split. I want to get in. Buddy, you should have been in a long time ago, or if you do get in today, you got to stay in. You have to be a long-term investor. You can't be a trader. Have you seen all the articles about these day trader guys? They get into the market at 8 o'clock and they want to be out by bedtime. These guys are idiots, okay? People like Warren Buffett eat them for lunch. Investing must be based on an assessment of the relationship between price and value. Stock splits have 3 consequences. Why does Berkshire Hathaway right now? I forgot what my last share costs. I think it's what is Berkshire trading at? Something like $75,000 a share. So we open up a B series stock. I think it's trading at like 10 or 15,000 a share. See, Warren doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have a teletaper. Why would he split a stock? He'd have to do all the splits, adjust it in his head. He's not going to do it. The only reason brokers have stock splits is for 3 reasons. They increase transaction costs by promoting higher share turnover. If the broker trades at X dollars a share, well, then if your stock splits, they get 2 commissions instead of 1. They attract shareholders with short-term, market-oriented views who unduly focus on stock market prices. The minute someone says a stock split, it attracts every lobotomy trader in Wall Street. And as a result of both of these effects, they lead to prices that depart materially from intrinsic business value. You should ignore political and economic forecasts. They're an expensive distraction for many investors and businessmen. 30 years ago, no one, not a single investor, could have foreseen the huge expansion of the Vietnam War, wage and price controls by Richard M. Nixon, 2 oil shocks, the resignation of a president, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, a one-day drop in the Dow of 508 points, or Treasury bill yields fluctuating between 2.8 and 17.4%. If you want to forecast, see a crystal ball, call the psychic hotline. Maybe Dionne Warwick and God have something going on, who knows. But other than that, pay attention to management and fundamental business principles. Make sure you're in an industry that's got a tailwind. Your broker, every time your broker calls you up, he lies like a finance minister on the eve of a devaluation. First of all, what is money in managerial finance? Money is a nominal means of exchange of value between persons trading freely in an uncoerced environment. Money brings out the highest extreme emotions in people. You mention it and it's either great or evil. You either gravitate towards pleasure and money or you avoid it like pain, debt, and fear. I know dentists I could tell that could give a 3-hour talk on Grossman cement, but don't even know what their lab supplies were, what their account receivables are. I'll walk in there and say, well, what are your account receivables over 30, over 60, over 90? Oh, I don't know. How many new patients you get last year? I'm not sure. How many new patients you get last year from 100 dentists? I'm not sure. How many patients they generate? I don't know. How much dentistry do those people? I mean, they just stay away from it because some emotion of pain and fear is tagged to money. Get over it, people. You've got to conquer the dragons and slay the monsters if you're going to climb the mountain of success. Whenever I see a serious lack of money, I see crime, drugs, and despair. Whenever I see a good amount of money, I see people getting up every morning and giving their best try at a good day's work. If money is evil, how come if you go to any town, you take me where there's no money, and that's where all the pain, misery, despair, or maybe what you call evil or sinners or whatever is at. Value creation is created when you buy assets that generate more cash when they cost. That's all there is to it. The poor and the middle class invest in consumption through the use of borrowed money in the form of credit card debt, car payments, and a home mortgage. The first sign that you are poor or middle class is that the largest so-called investment that you have is your home or your car, okay? It's the first sign of middle class. I bought my house. It's a good investment. Really? How much does it suck out of your wallet every month? Oh, a couple $100. Oh, good investment. What is corporate finance? A balance sheet is simply, a balance. Look at a balance sheet. Something has to balance. Your assets, let's say you have this house. It's an asset. Equals your liabilities minus your equity. Your equity is what you own into it, okay? Say that you have a house worth $100,000, you got $10,000 paid into it, you still owe $90,000 on the mortgage. You control a $100,000 asset. Leave these things up for a long time because these guys will be writing a lot of notes with this stuff, and there's no reason to look at my bold face. An asset is what you control. A liability is what you owe. The equity is what you've got into this thing. My dad always said legalize prayer in school if the trade-offs are they mandate algebra in church, okay? So basically, corporate financial management, capital budgeting. What fixed assets or long-term investment projects should your firm, your dental office pursue? Liquidity management is what the New York Stock Exchange is. Don't let your money get too far from cash. And my dad said that 100 times. He said it 1,000 times. That's liquidity management. How should the firm manage its net working capital, and how can it ensure that it always has sufficient cash to meet its obligations? The number one reason of small business failure in the United States is that their business was doing great, it just ran out of cash. Okay, it takes money to make money, and then when they get cash, they do not manage liquidity, etc. Financing dividends. What mix of debt versus equity and internally generated cash versus externally generated cash should the firm use? How should the company return cash to the shareholders? Forms of business organizations are sole proprietorship and partnership. A sole proprietorship and a partnership are difficult to obtain large amounts of capital, which shouldn't be a problem for dental offices, but you do have unlimited liability. And they have a limited life because when you die, your proprietorship's done. The positive things are inexpensive to form, and there's no corporate income tax. But you cannot bring on an associate where you double your gosh darn liability without being a corporation. Anybody who tells you that there's no legal advantages of protection to be a corporation is an idiot through and through. A lawyer's not telling you that. And if they are a lawyer, remember one thing about lawyers. Remember, go back to dental school. Remember about half the class where you thought, oh my God, they're really going to have a license in dentistry. Remember in dental school you thought, oh my God, can you believe that whole table there's going to have a license one day? And you sit there and chew your fingernails? That's the same as law school, okay? Half the lawyers are dumber than a gosh darn rock. The forms of business organizations is corporation is a legal fiction. There's no such thing as a corporation. It's a legal entity. When people say they should raise corporate taxes because, and it's always some harebrained, liberal, left-wing, Democrat, tree-hugging, brainless twat, he sits there and says, well, GM should have to pay more taxes. Well, who is GM? Have you met him? Have you seen him? What does he look like, huh? If you assess GM $1 billion in taxes, guess what happens? They raise the cars $1 billion. You can't tax a corporation. They don't exist. It's a legal fiction. The only person who met a corporation was Dionne Warwick. Separate from its owners and managers. It has an unlimited life, which means it's perpetual. It's easily transferable ownership. I own the shares of this corporation, and you want it, I can sell it to you in 5 seconds. New York Stock Exchange, instant liquidity. It takes you 10 minutes to turn a stock or a bond into cash or into another stock. You have very limited liability, especially if you're a Delaware corporation or if you're a Las Vegas corporation. You get better access to capital because the banks repossess it. All they need is the shares of stocks. There is double taxation, but for a small business corporation like yourself, you really don't have that double taxation because you just don't show the corporation a profit. You just pay out all the money and there's no taxation. Corporate organizational form. The corporation is characterized by the separation of ownership and control. Who owns the firm versus who runs the firm? Management runs the corporation. Shareholders own the corporation. View the firm as a nexus of contracts between invested parties, shareholders, creditors, customers, suppliers, employees. Why am I talking about corporation managerial finance? Because what we have today is we have dentists telling each other their score in a form that nobody else understands. It's voodoo. You have dentists saying, oh, 50% overhead. I'm looking at the investment sheets, and I'm sitting there saying, well, where's your rent? Oh, I paid off my land and building. So you think that if you're Sears and you put $1 billion into the 114-story Sears Tower, where if I put $1 billion in an index fund, it'd pay me $120 million a year. So you think in your limited pea-brain mind that you could put $1 billion in the Sears Tower, say there's no rent, and you live there free? It's called cost of capital. You know, you move. I mean, so what happens? And then I say, okay, well, let's say the rent's in there. I say, okay, so you're 50% overhead. Well, who gets the other half of the money? You do. Is that right? Well, then that says you have 100% overhead. Well, no, I get half. Well, what if you quit? What if you die and your wife wanted to keep the business and replaced you? Well, okay, let's say that you made $100,000 last year from, say, a dental office did $200,000, and you said it had 50% overhead, but you took home the other $100,000. I say it has 100% overhead. And then you die, or I shoot you, because your wife brings me as a consultant. She says, what's the single most important thing you can do for my business? So I say, I'll just do it right now. And I shoot her husband in the head. And then I get an associate in there. I put him in there. I pay him $60,000 a year. Well, see, $60,000 was the opportunity cost of you doing the dentistry. $40,000 would have been the profit. So now we're looking at $40,000 profit on sales of $200. See, you have 20% profit. Kind of look at it like a restaurant. The number one thing dentists do to flush more money down the toilet is if you came from where my parents came from, restaurants. I remember in our school, we had an interesting school. The founder of Godfathers was in our church. The founder of Pizza Hut was in our church, Dan Carney and Frank Carney. The Bellumos had an Italian restaurant. I mean, it's really neat. But if you had an Italian restaurant and did $1 million a year, and you got to be 65 years old, you just sit there and said, you know what, I just can't go down there. I can't do pizza anymore. I can't do spaghetti. I just can't do it anymore. You wouldn't just sell you wouldn't have someone come in and praise your Italian restaurant and liquidate it. What happens when you sell it? Well, number one, I don't care what it's worth. People come in with these arcane witchcraft formulas and say, well, I will come in and value how much your restaurant's worth. Oh, really? And how are you going to do that? Well, I have a formula. Buddy, you've come a long way in life to think that there's a formula to determine how much something's worth. The only way you determine what something's worth is what someone's willing to pay for it. What if the guy came in and said your restaurant was worth $27 billion? You think Bill Gates is going to give you 1/4 of his money for your stupid Italian restaurant? You put it up for sale. The only offer you get is $200,000. Guess how much your Italian restaurant's worth? The camera crew is stoned. All right, Mark. Dave. So the deal is, I don't care. You know, most of these dentists tell me that their dental office is worth $500,000. What if I had two identical dental offices? I mean, same square feet, same number of chairs. All the staff here had an identical twin sister that all worked here, two identical staff. Well, if this office was in one of the 8 cities that had a million or more population, and the other one was in a city that had 2,000 people in it, the one that was in a million-person city has liquidity and would be worth twice as much as the town of 2,000. Because the town of 2,000, before someone gives you an offer, they want to have to live in Bumblebutt, Georgia, okay? There's only 2 people that live in this town. They were brothers and sisters. They married each other, and they didn't go to dental school. So the deal is, it's liquidity. So we sit there, and if you own $1 million restaurant and you can't take the work anymore, you replace yourself with a chef, and you own your $1 million restaurant, and you still make $200,000 a year by just going in there every day and just walking through there for 5 minutes, having a salad, checking the deposit, whatever. So you need to get your office incorporated so that you can bring in an associate. Remember I told you at 1970, the 50th percentile graduating dentist from dental school in 1970 was in their own practice in 18 months. The 1990 class took 6.5 years. So you can sit there at 45 or 50, incorporate, bring an associate. For the first time in your life, go do maybe a cruise from LA through the Panama Canal to Miami for 2 weeks, maybe a year or 2 later, and take a 6-week Mediterranean cruise. I love cruises. The cruises are my funnest form of entertainment. I do at least one every year, because a cruise is the only time in your life where you get your wife in a room that's about 10 feet by 4 feet, and all you do on a cruise is boink and eat, boink and eat, boink and eat, boink and eat. Usually at the end of the week, they have to carry your wife off in a wheelchair or something. It's the best week of the year. And if you have a corporation, you can take on a little more risk, a little more liability. View the goal of the corporation is simply to maximize profits. That's what you got to look at your goals. If what you're doing in your dental office, if the goal is to make a profit, you got to ask yourself every day as an entrepreneur, is what I'm going to do today maximize my profits? Is this the best profitable decision? What are you thinking to yourself when you're leaving Thursday at 4 and you know you're closed down Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? Forget you, the dentist who says, yeah, but Howard, I'm 50 and I'm slowing down. Remember, these dentists, they peak somewhere between 45 and 49. They're peaked out and they start the downward slide. Well, the downward slide's not good for the corporation. And maybe it's good for you. And you say, but I own the corporation. Well, I don't care. The corporation's different. You're just a shareholder. We got a corporation. We have staff. We have patients. They're calling up. You're gone. You're on vacation. They don't know what to do. They're getting an answer machine. You're unlisted. And I've got publicly traded dental companies expanding at the speed of light because you're leaving thousands and thousands and thousands of dental graduates laying there cheaply in the market because you're not absorbing them. This is exactly what happened to Walgreens. Mr. Walgreens was a pharmacist. He noticed a demographic change. The class went from all men to half women. The men all wanted their own house, own job, their own place. Women all wanted a job. Well, the majority, 2/3 of them. So what did happen? He could recruit from all 50 states to send in one city and blow all the solo practitioners right out of their water with simple skills of economy, insurance, negotiations. You're leaving too many dental graduates unemployed in the marketplace, and that's what's fueling a lot of this publicly traded stuff. The goal of the corporation would be to maximize profits. Is it really maximize your profits when you close down Thursday? Hire an associate, leave them in Friday, leave them in Saturday. It helps the survival of the organization. It stops the downward plateau. It maximizes resources available to corporate managers, provides stable employment. It makes you a good corporate citizen, and it maximizes your wealth. Who's wealthier? Five has $100,000 in the bank and expects no future income, or Rose has nothing in the bank but expects $150,000 in 3 years. You need to consider the time value of money versus risk, okay? So you sit there, the concept of value, profit versus wealth, short-term versus long-term, risk. Wealth is the risk-adjusted present value of all current and future cash flows to be received. You're selling your dental office for $280,000. I could incorporate that thing, put an associate in there, pay an office manager maybe $10,000 a year more, and if this thing took out a $5,000 a month dividend for the next 25 years, you tell me if you knew you could get a $5,000 a month dividend from age 50 to 75, you tell me you would have sold that for $200,000. Don't be crazy. Maximizing shareholder width is not inconsistent with social welfare. If you believe it is, you're a communist. Efficiency, Adam Smith said, is his invisible hand. The exceptions are monopolies, a non-competitive environment, and management also follows their own self-interest. How does Gordon Gekko choose his target? The best defense against a hostile takeover, publicly traded dentistry, HMOs, is you work on your own game. You focus on your own game, everything else will take care of itself. Shareholders versus stakeholders. Does maximizing shareholder wealth imply taking extreme positions toward other claims? Does such a firm? Do you hire employees in the day labor market with absolutely no implication of continued employment? Refuse to ever make charitable contributions? Try to get as much profit as possible in every customer transaction? Maximizing shareholder wealth, in fact, requires a careful balancing of all the stakeholders' interests. You got the government, you got the workers, you got the environment, you got the owners of capital, you got your suppliers. Everybody has a different perspective. The billionaires, the millionaires manage all these perspectives. It's kind of like 6 spokes of a wheel and you're the hub. Value is created when the firm invests in assets that generate more cash than they cost. So basically, the control of the corporation, managers control the day-to-day operation. That's your office manager. Managers have their own objectives, which may differ from those of the shareholder owners like yourself. They want growth, they want survival, they want perks. If you don't have an office manager, you don't want to pay him any money, you don't want to give him a private office with a computer terminal, a fax, a machine, and pay him a little more money, then no one's managing the ship. And when a dentist tells me, well, I don't believe in the office manager concept, what you really just said is you don't believe in delegation. You're a control freak, okay? Don't worry about control. Is it really exciting to have no money, but you can completely control the staff and be the boss? Let the staff go. Let the managers go. Delegate, delegate, delegate. You'll find out everybody's creative and you have more fun. You can bring in associates. The stronger your office manager is, the larger you can expand. How can managers be induced to work in your interest? Well, you got to pay for performance. You have to bonus. Stock ownership plans, stock options. Since we're not publicly traded, all we do is wage-weighted profit sharing. We designate a percent of the profit to be given back to the employees, weighted against how much they make. So if total payroll was $10,000, and I decided I'm going to throw in $5,000 of profit to profit sharing this month, that means each dollar of payroll would have got a 50% profit margin. You have to do this with your labor market so that they have the correct incentives to make high-quality decisions. What's what you call as an asset? Real assets are real estate, machinery. These assets generate cash flow. Financial assets are 401k, stocks and bonds or whatever. What is cash flow versus accounting numbers? For finance and financial decisions, the most important item extracted from accounting statements is cash flow. The statement of cash flow is the number one report that I have to see before I'm going to invest in a company. It's the number one report I want to see in my own company. It's the only gosh darn statement I've never seen in a dental office. They've always got a gosh darn P&L. A profit and loss statement, a statement of income, has 2 non-cash items: depreciation, deferred taxes, I call them the double Ds. A cash flow, think of the cash flow statement as your check register, okay? I need to know what your cash flow is. And some of your expenses on there are things that were investments. I still need to know the cash flow, and then some of these things that you put money back in, like if you said the month of November had no profit, but you bought a $20,000 micro-abrasion machine, I said, well, you had $20,000 of cash flow. He just chose to retain it and retained earnings, and I think that's a very good investment to start going from $30 sealants that are never paid for on 12-year molars and the 8 bicuspids to now doing $110 occlusal composites that insurance picks up 80% of any age of any tooth. And one has a 100% failure rate in 10 years. The other one has a 3% failure rate in 10 years. Finance is based on cash flows, not accounting figures. It is true, nonetheless, that much of the information you need to derive cash flow is available from accounting statements. The 2 most important accounting statements, or I should say 2 other important accounting statements. The balance sheet, which I tell you what balances your asset, your house, your dental office, balances with your liability, what you owe, plus your equity, what you got into it. The balance sheet provides information regarding the firm's financial position at a point in time. Okay, the income statement provides information as to the firm's performance over a number of times. So the balance sheet's your position, the income statement is your performance, and your cash flow statement is, basically, don't let your assets get too far from cash. What is the cash flow? What do we have? Liquidity, flexibility. Accounting income is not cash flow. For many types of financial analysis and for most decision making, we are most concerned with the company's cash flows. Accounting figures include many accruals, which reflect the accounting profession's matching principle. However, cash flow figures can be extracted from accounting statements. I would recommend going back on a Saturday, get your MBA. I mean, you can go there Mondays and Wednesday nights from 6 to 10, or Tuesdays and Thursday nights from 6 to 10, or all day Saturday for 2 years. And when you're at our age, come on, you know 2 years goes like that. I mean, 2 years seems forever. You tell an 18-year-old kid to go to JUCO college for 2 years to get his prerequisites, he thinks it's forever. At our age, my gosh, 36 years old, 2 years goes like that. It seems like just yesterday I had Eric, hell now he's 10 or 9 or something like that. Sources of cash on cash flow. Sources and use of cash. Source of cash or cash flows from operations, sales less cost, expense and taxes, net increases in current liabilities, sales of fixed assets or new loans. Use of cash or net increases in current assets, purchase of fixed assets, payments to debt holders, payment to equity. Here's the number one cause of small business failure right there. And that is, they use a lot of cash to make a lot of sales, but they didn't collect their money, their account receivables. They got all these people. They took $90,000 in cash to make this machine. They sold it to this guy who's now paying them $1,000 a month for the next 90 months. And then they made 2 more sales, and basically they ran out of cash. And they take all their stuff to the bank. The bank says, my God, if you're this stupid, if you ran out of cash, I just soon cut my losses now. I'm only into you for $80,000. And you're like, $80,000? But I got everything out. I got my whole life in this. It's worth $500,000. And you go bankrupt because the gosh darn bank wants to cut his losses at $60,000. You use the whole kit and caboodle because you ran out of cash. Because every time you fight with your wife, and every time you have stress in your business, it's about money. And you know why you fight with your wife and you get all the stress of money? Because you have an emotion in your head that says, I will go learn how to do root canals, implants, orthodontics, crown and bridge, fillings, preventive restoration. I will talk about the Krebs cycle till I'm blue in the face, and I'll tell you how microabrasion works. And these dentists pride themselves in understanding bonding agents, Panavia 21, HEMA, Bowen's form, all this stuff like that. And the same idiot can't tell you is over 30 account receivables, over 60, is over 90. He can't tell you how many new patients. He can't tell you if his computer software runs 5 reports, 10 reports, 40 reports. And then when he gets real stressful because he wants to buy something, his wife says, we don't have any money. He starts yelling and saying, well, I'm doing my job, and you bought that car phone, and I knew you shouldn't have gone to your mother's. And there you are fighting because you're an inept, incompetent, stupid CEO. There's not a Fortune 500 CEO that would ever yell at his wife or ever get in a fight with the vice president because you, the CEO, the driver of your ship, didn't have command over the money, okay? When you don't go to the driver's seat, if you're not going to be the captain of the ship, fire yourself and let someone else take over. That is one of the best reasons for group practice, okay? The people that love to steer the ship, we like doing it. If you don't like to steer the ship, that's fine. I don't want to play golf. I do not understand anybody who wants to go out and knock a gosh darn stupid ball around 18 holes. I don't mind golf for the first hole. I don't mind it for the second hole. I don't mind chasing the beer cart lady. But after the 3rd hole, the 4th hole, it's like, how many more times do we have to do this? See, we all have different interests. That's okay. There are some people who like country music. That's okay. But if this is not your talent, get out of the way. You got a sinking boat. You're yelling at your wife. Your staff are demoralized. Your customers aren't getting service. You probably should be in a group practice where you can come in and you concentrate. My doctors come to me sometime and they're all excited about this or that, or they're all excited about Siemens Sirac 2. And one's excited about this, wants to redo this, change that, whatever. Go let them do that. I want to steer the ship. If you're interested in it, do it, be good at it. If you're not interested in it, either get interested in it or get out of the way, and don't drag your family. It's the number one cause of divorce. It's the number one cause of group practice breakup, okay? The balance sheet. Notice that all examples of sources of cash involve items that would increase a liability or equity account on the balance sheet, or that would decrease an asset account. All examples of uses of cash involve items that would decrease a liability or equity account on the balance sheet, or that would increase an asset account. The cash flow identity. Cash flow identity. Source of cash, use of cash. If the cash account is excluded from working capital, or source of cash equals use of cash. Further, Any source or use of cash that cannot be identified from the income statement can be identified by changes in balance sheet accounts. Cash flow from assets equals cash flow to creditors plus cash flow to equity holders. Basically, cash flow from assets is cash flow from operations minus additions to fixed assets, minus additions to net working capital. And this might be confusing to you, but all I'm saying is that sometimes your profit and loss, this is the number one complaint I get from dentists. They walk in there and say, well, my P&L, my profit and loss statement says I make $20,000 a month. And now the accountant's saying that I made $200,000 last year, and I got to pay $100,000 in taxes, and we don't have a dime. Okay, well, let's look at our sources of cash. You were profitable, but this, it's the details that kill you in business, okay? So basically, I think the best way you can start learning about these things is this. Start getting interested in the publicly traded dental companies. Not so much that you want to work for them or you want to sell to them or you want to become practice prostitute. Not that. I want you to do this. There's only one way to do numbers. You can sit there and go around, listen to all these practice management people tell you their own artificial yardsticks. And you know they're artificial yardsticks when they come up to you and say, well, for the average practice, for every new patient you get, that practice should be generating about $2,000 in dentistry. So if you get 10 new patients a month, you should be doing $20,000 a month. Where the hell is that yardstick from? I mean, is that where do they pull this shit out of? I don't know where they come up with this stuff. Use standard accounting practices, okay? What does the Financial Accounting Standards Board say about this practice? Where does this yardstick come from? Before you start measuring your office with all these yardsticks, ask yourself, where in God's earth did this yardstick come from? Most of them were pulled out of a magician's hat. They don't mean anything, yada, yada, yada. And if you start getting all the publicly traded 10Q quarterly reports from publicly traded dental companies that have lab bills, supplies, front office, you will actually start getting, after you read about the 10th or 15th 10Q quarterly report or their 10K annual reports that are filed with the SEC, there's no misstatements. If they intentionally make a misstatement, it's a felony. Their directors could go to jail for 5 years per offense, pay $10,000 fine. If you have a misstatement, you go to the SEC. There's no jury at the SEC. It's you, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and you will go to jail. And I don't care how rich you are. Michael Milken was a billionaire, and he went to jail for a long time. Because when you deal with the government, remember, these people tell you all these things that are tax deductible. Well, I heard this is IRS deductible. I heard this tax deductible. Yeah, everything in the world's tax deductible until you go into the damn IRS court. And it's you, the IRS judge, and there's no jury. You can't get Johnny the Cockroach Cochran and think you're going to get a whole jury of trailer trash and pull a whoopee over him. It's you, the IRS judge, you lose. Same thing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, whereas in practice management, you have all these people up there talking. He says, oh yes, in my practice I do this. I know these people. They don't have a practice. They haven't practiced for years and years and years and years. And then other people admit, oh, I've never had a practice. Who are you listening to? Go to the Financial Accounting Standards Board, the Securities and Exchange Commission, benchmark off people who have to tell the truth, like Castle Dental Centers. Here's Castle Dental Center's statement, her income, okay? You start benchmarking on this. When you read their 10K, you say, well, Howard, what does a gosh darn Castle Dental Center that does $31 million in a year have to do in my office that's $300,000? Well, if you read the 10K, in fact, when you start off, just stick with the 10Ks, because the 10K is the whole thing for a year. Well, if you're reading Castle Dental and they say, okay, we did 31 million, but we have 3,000 dentists, you can make a simple division, and that is a good benchmark. It's a good sample. Let's say this practice management guru was actually telling the truth about his numbers, which about 94 to 99% don't. Still, that's an adverse sample. If some UFO swooped down right now and picked me up and took me back to Pluto land, you might make people believe that everybody on Earth was short, fat, and bald and a male. See, you would have to come down to earth and say, okay, there are 6 billion people. I need to take a random sample of that replacement. I need to go pick up a couple of thousand people from every corner of the globe, and they'd come back and they'd have some Chinese people, some Indians, some Middle Eastern, some Africans, some Europeans, some Brazilians, and they'd throw them all out and keep the Brazilian chick in Rio. But anyway, they would have a good sample, okay? So these things are very good samples. You got accurate information. You got large statistical sampling. This is what we call benchmarking. Here's Castle Dental Sellers' balance sheet, assets, cash, and start telling your accountant what I would do. Here's what I would do in a second. You want to take yourself to the next level. Incorporate your practice. It's very, very good because I'll tell you what, if you don't want to get sued, the best way not to get sued is not to have any money. If you don't have any money, you'll never get sued. I mean, if a little old lady's walking across the street and some illegal alien runs over and kills her, there's not a lawyer that'll take the case. The government has to come in and take it because no lawyer wants truth, justice, and liberty. They all want profit. Just like you have to stay in business, they have to eat, okay? Well, if you've got money, it shows up in credit searches. And the more money you make, the more vultures come out of you, okay? So what will happen is if you incorporate, you will massively make it harder and harder and harder. In fact, when I find a 40-year-old dentist who's not incorporated, who doesn't have a living trust, who doesn't have life insurance, who doesn't have an exit strategy, I wonder if he hates his wife and children or exactly, what do you think? You could drop dead tomorrow. But if you go get incorporated, what will happen is if you give your accountant the 10K annual report for Coast Dental, Castle Dental, Monarch Dental, Orthodontic Centers of America, or stay away from the orthos if you're a general dentist. Just keep it general dentistry. Coast Dental, Castle Dental, Pentagra, Monarch, what have you, American Dental Partners, whatever, and you're incorporated, your accountant can give you the information back exactly like these 10Ks of these publicly traded, and each one of these companies has anywhere from 25 offices to 200 offices, and you take the high and the low, and every one of your lab deals, I mean, if the lowest person spent 6% on labs and the highest spent 9%, well, then you would know based on a sample of 2,000 publicly traded dental offices with true information, not lies. Gosh darn it, it's called benchmarking. If you're Honda, you should pay attention to Nissan, General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, LeBaron, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's called benchmarking. Here's Castle Dental Center's revenue. Here's another one, Coast. Here's how their stock trades. I don't invest in any of these things because it's not that they're bad, it's just that they're industry. I mean, dentistry just puts along maybe 2% inflation. Why, gosh darn, Yahoo trades at 1,000 times sales. Internet stocks are exploding. I want my money in Dell and Intel and Microsoft. I'm not going to put in gosh darn dental stocks that are putting along. That'd be like putting all your money in railroads. What century are you from, okay? Here's Coast Dental statement of income. Here's Coast Dental Services balance sheet. Learn how to read this stuff. And the only way you'll learn how to read it is like the only way. You ever notice in elementary school and high school and calculus, all these people say they're bad in math? You say, really, when's the last time you did a math problem? Well, I haven't taken math for 2 years because I'm bad at it. Really? Well, I bet if you did it every day for an hour for 2 years, you'd probably be pretty damn good at it. Here's my benchmark. Come in close to stay here. Stay here for a while. In fact, just stay on the screen. Benchmarking on publicly traded dental management companies. So I'll take like the number of offices, and these publicly traded range from 30 offices to 200. Number of dentists employed or affiliated. Between 39 dentists working for them, the smallest one, up to 256. See, these are huge, statistically significant samples. Percent held for management services and fees. The average one of these companies will take anywhere from 9 to 78% of collections. Obviously, it depends on what they're going to do. 9%, that's just profit on top. 78%, obviously, for that, they're going to pay the staff, all the bills, whatever. The revenues for these publicly traded companies run between $7,900,000 to $53 million. Revenue per dentist. Now, here's where it starts applying to you. Listen up closely. Revenue per dentist averages between a low of $169,532 a year to $413,514. What I would tell you from that, based on a sample of all the public trades with anywhere between 30 to 200 offices, who have anywhere between 39 and 256 dentists working for them, that this is hugely, massively, statistically relevant. I actually think this information, it could even be, probably is better than the ADAs, and the ADAs has got to be a 99% out of 100. In fact, I give the ADA survey statistics 100%. All the math is shown, all the variances, standard deviation 1, 2, 3, it's done brilliantly. But I'm telling you that you should be producing at least $1 more than 169,532. You got to be above the floor and below the ceiling. The ceiling is 413,514 a year. Total company net income is anywhere from loss of $3 million. I won't say the name of the company, but one company on sales of $50 million lost $3 million. That's another reason I don't invest in these companies. There's no shining stars. Net income per dentist is anywhere between losing $12,500 a year per dentist to company makes $62,353 is the high. I don't think you could ever earn more profit than $62,353 off an associate. If you could, you ought to tell the shareholders of these publicly traded companies and take them over and be a multimillionaire. Percent of revenue for fee for service ranges from 33% to only one that's 100%. That's the Omar Reed's Pentagra here in Scottsdale. Percent of revenues from PPO ranges from 0 to Pentagra to 38%. I'll cancel out the Pentagras because they're the other ones, 0 PPOs, HMOs. But the average percent of revenue from fee for service for the publicly traded minus Pentagra is about 33%. Percent of revenue from PPOs averages about 38%. Percent of revenue from capitated managed care is about 53%. That's why I think a lot of these guys will do good, because they're focused on a segment that you don't know how to do. If you go into managed care, you know, these guys will put in linoleum floors, $3,900 operatories. The only thing you got is amalgams, IRNs, partials, dentures. They don't do root canals for $100 co-payments. They don't do parasurgery. They focus, so they make profit doing managed care. Percent of total revenue paid to the dentist averages between 14.5% to 23%. And what does the average associate get paid at Dr. Numbnuts? 40%. Numbnuts. If your overhead's 65%, how can you pay him 40%? You lose a frickin' nickel every time he does $1. Did you have basic math in the first grade? If the average corporation pays between 14.5% to 23% as a high, that's the floor and the low. The floor is 14.5%, the high is 23%. I pay my associates 25%. They actually get paid 2% higher than any gosh darn publicly traded. And a lot of dentists come out and say, well, that's real low from around here. Why don't you better say, I practicing dentistry where they film the deliverance, okay? Percent of total revenue paid to hygienists is between 5% on the floor, 13.7% on the ceiling. Percent of total revenue paid to the front and back office labor ranges between 14 to 22%. If you're paying your staff less than 14%, you could probably sharpen a number 2 pencil in your rear end. If you're paid more than 22%, you're the highest one out there. My total front office, back office labor is 20%. Lab and sundries expense, every one of these companies combines that. I don't know why. They all do. They don't separate out. I wish they separate it, but they don't. But lab bill plus sundries is anywhere from a floor of 10% to a high of 17.7. So I guess if your lab bill is 10% and your sundries are 7.7, you would be the highest. You would never want to be higher than that. And the lowest, they can get it down to 10. Rent expense as a percent of income is anywhere from 5.4% of a floor to 9.4% as a high. And advertising expense as a percent of income is between 0 and 6.4%. Remember, that's not of sales, that's of income. Depreciation expense as a percent of income is 1.5 to 4.3. And general administration overhead, that's for the corporate office, you know, the ones that suck all the fat off the top, is between a floor of 5.2 and 14.5 is the ceiling. Here's a list of the companies, dental management company statistics, revenue sources. The ones I watch like a hawk are Coast, American Dental. Coast is 66% fee for service, 33% PPO. American Dental Partners, 33% fee for service, 14% PPO, 53% capitation. If you're doing a lot of capitation, you might want to really watch these guys. Burner Management out of Colorado, 79.6% fee for service, 20.4% capitation. They don't break out how much is PPO. Castle's 50% indemnity, 38% PPO, 12% capitation. Monarch is 60.8%. They're out of Dallas. 60.8% fee for service, 39% capitation. General Dental is greater than 82% indemnity, less than 18% capitation. Dental Care Alliance is between 75 and 80% fee for service, and capitated managed care or HMOs 20-25%. Pentagra is 100%. Omar Reed's Pentagra is 100% fee for service, 0 PPO, 0 capitation. And a lot of you guys might sit there and say, well, you know, none of this applies to me because they use PPOs and they use this and that and this and that. People, this all applies to you. Number one, just the way they organize your information. Forget how the revenue comes in. Just learn how to read a balance sheet, a statement of income. This stuff is best. If you tell me that you've been a dentist for 10 years and you're not interested in reading all the 10Ks, these annual reports, I guarantee you argue with your wife once a month with money, you argue with your staff about money, you turn down pay raise, you have high staff turnovers because somewhere in your childhood, usually what it was, the psychologists say that the reason that professionals went into medicine, dentistry, and law is because they didn't want to go into sales. The reason they didn't want to go into sales is because sales was stressful. The reason it was stressful is because their dad would come home from work and saying, God dang it, who left the front door open? Let all the air conditioner out. Gosh darn, who leaves all these lights on? Do you think we're made of money? And there was so much stress about, gosh darn, who drank all the milk? That stuff's $2 a gallon. And you have a lot of fear tagged with free enterprise. So don't worry about this stuff. Stay back on the screen for the last couple of minutes. Coast has, look at the number of dentists employed. Coast has 85 dentists. American Dental Partners, 215. Burner, 53. Castle doesn't state. Monarch had 111. Gentle has 256. Dental Care Alliance, 39. Pentagra, 120. Here's how they break down for lab and sundries, rent, advertising, depreciation, other, G&A, general administration. Here's dental management company statistics as labor expense as a percent of income. These are all in your handouts, but you guys watch these. You're not going to learn dental management statistics if you don't start reading these 10 Qs. And when bias is a deviation of the expected value of an estimate from the actual quantity estimates. Biases are systematic. Awareness of a bias does not automatically eliminate it. There are two kinds of biases, cognitive and emotional. I really believe that there's so much misinformation in practice management that if you would just watch these 10 Qs and you just read the publicly traded, the good information on the SECs, you're going to start reading managerial finance just by osmosis. And if this confused you a lot, go back and get your MBA. 2 years, be like that. Thanks for another fun day. I'll see you tomorrow.